Hello, brave adventurer, and welcome to the world of Old School Runescape. Today, we will be adventuring to the far corners of Gelinor in order to uncover the mystery of the powerful dark warlord who conquered the entirety of Zeah. You have heard his name countless times without a second thought to his identity. You have plundered his lairs for riches beyond your wildest dreams, and you have met his generals and guardians, of which he used to become the most powerful and feared conqueror, perhaps in the entirety of RuneScape history. The great and mighty continent of Zeah has known much strife in its time, even though when we think of battles in RuneScape, our first thoughts are the God Wars, the awe-inspiring battle taking place beneath the frozen Asgardian mountains. But unlike the generals of the God Wars, who are relatively simple to defeat for seasoned adventurers, the beings involved in Zeah's clash are the things of nightmares. Zeah is a continent to the far west and consists of two major landmasses, with Great Kourend and to the south, Varlamore. There are many distinct ecosystems and inhabitants of these expansive lands. The oldest known recorded histories of Zeah detail the existence of an ancient and mysterious race known simply as the Old Ones. They were advanced in magic and science, having created many different wonders. They even created a strange artifact known as the icosahedron that is located in Varlamore at a prison known as Nepotzili. The Old Ones' population began to dwindle in numbers, and they started looking for a way to save their people. They began experiments on soul transference, but were to our knowledge unsuccessful and unable to save their people. After this, they mostly went extinct, and the land was inherited to the men and dwarves who had begun to come over while fleeing the God Wars on the mainland. The Great Kingdom of Kourend was established by these refugees, and they began to build massive infrastructure and trade with one another. Many different rulers tried to take control of Zeah, but it wasn't until the Fourth Age that things truly got dark, and Zeah saw its first conqueror. The Fourth Age was also known as the Age of Mortals. It was by far the most important time for the tribes of men, especially after the devastation the God Wars had inflicted on Gelinor. During the Fourth Age, the various races of Gelinor began to repopulate the land and establish strongholds, territories, and even entire countries. Humans notably became the most common race in Gelinor, settling virtually every corner of the map. But before this, most humans could be found living in barbaric tribes or under the rule of the vampires of Zamorak's army in Mauritania. Humans began to search for a new place to call home now that the gods they had once served no longer resided in Gelinor. They were finally free to decide their own fate, to feast on success, or to starve from their misfortune, but no longer would the divine rulers make this call. In the far western continent of Zeah, the early humans and dwarves began to establish towns and clans. Not only did some come to Zeah to prosper during the Fourth Age, but there were some early comers during the Third Age God Wars. The Lovacange dwarves first came to Zeah to escape the grasp of an evil Zerosian vampire executioner. That was a mouthful. They managed to slay this vampire and established the clan of Lovacange in the north. Some of the other earlier clans to Zeah include Arceus and the Fishers of Piscarilius. During the Fourth Age, farmers and woodcutters began to settle the southern end of Zeah and established a land of plenty. They began to trade with another forming clan to their west, the Shazians. The host city's corn and fruits were welcomed goods in exchange for the protection of the Shazian mercenaries, from the horrors of the intercontinent. The new settlers of Zeah were prosperous and happy, but they had no idea of what lurked beneath their feet. One of the other, I guess you would say, refugees during the God Wars was a demon general of Zamorak himself named Skotizo. This demon had stolen an artifact he was supposed to retrieve for the god Zamorak and ended up fleeing to Zeah. He used this artifact to establish the catacombs of Kourend, a deep network that runs between each of the clans of Zeah and has a truly sinister nature. It is said to not even be part of our physical reality and instead resides in another realm. It's full of many different types of abominations, but most notably, Skotizo himself still lurks down there, awaiting the day his sins will be brought to the light. With this great demonic terror beneath their feet, and many threats, both human and supernatural, on the surface, the citizens of Zeah had to be constantly vigilant, and, out of necessity, the kingdoms of Zeah united to form the great nation of Kourend. This proved to be an excellent strategy, as having allies made facing abominations such as Wintertot, an otherworldly ice demon who froze a chunk of the continent, much more manageable. When the powerful kingdoms of Great Kourend are united, they are unstoppable, but with great power comes great corruption. You probably thought I was going to say responsibility, but I'm not Uncle Ben. But in the 33rd decade, the most bloodthirsty individual in Zeah's history rose to power. His name is King Shazian VII, and he took control of Great Kourend from the spineless relatives who gave up the Shazian name due to shame. And this is the individual who later came to be known as Xeric. Before he violently took control of the throne, he was known as Lord Rykard Shazian. It's kind of a funny coincidence that there is also a Lord Rykard in Elden Ring, and just like Xeric, he is so afraid of his mortality that he seeks out esoteric knowledge in order to extend his life past his death. In one of the earliest historical accounts we have from his time as king, it says that he began scouring Zeah for sources of dark magical power and found the artifact that the Zamorakian demon Skotizo had brought here from Karamja and used to create the catacombs of Kourend. This mysterious dark altar is one that has single-handedly shaped the course of Zeah's history in many different ways. The Arceus people used it to create great rune altars of blood and soul, as it apparently had the ability to tap into what's called the River of Souls. This is the passageway of the dead to the afterlife, the entrance to which is guarded by the horrific slayer beast Cerberus deep in the Taverley dungeon. But long before the birth of King Shazian, it was used to power a magical seal placed on the massive and looming doors of Din, a prison for the mysterious and evil ice demon Wintertot. This ice demon had frozen solid the northern part of the continent, and thankfully with the help of this altar, they were able to seal it away. King Shazian found this artifact to be fascinating, as it was said to be able to twist dimensions, warp minds, and bridge the gap between life and death. The king knew that these were not just wise tales, but a blueprint for how he would become the greatest and most feared king Zeah had ever known. The king began to study the power of the Dark Altar in a great tower of magic, of which he even added prisons and various accommodations for his many sick experiments, all with the goal of learning how to control this dark power. His hunger for knowledge led him to seek out other sources of this malevolent dark energy, and gathered his best men together to undergo an expedition to the mysterious Mount Quidamortum. This mountain was the perfect place for the king to continue his experiments due to its naturally occurring malevolence. The name Quidamortum itself means living dead in Latin. A temple was constructed in the mountain, and it was here that the king began to experiment on the local fauna with the help of another mysterious dark altar, seemingly having the ability to amplify the power of the original dark altar he had spent so much time obsessed with. This experimentation led to corrupted abominations being unleashed upon the Kibos lowlands where the mountain resided, and some of these abominations even flourished, as is seen with the complex society of the lizard men being present to this current day. You may have already guessed this, but lizard men are actually a cross between men and lizards. I'm not really sure how Xeric managed to achieve this, but I don't really want to think about it too much. It was clear that he was compiling an army of these beasts with heinous intent, and it seemed like the king had finally found the power he sought after, but the way the king had taken power to begin with had not been something favored by many. Under Xeric's command, he had many powerful regiments, such as the Twisted Archers and the Kodai Mages. But it was the elite warriors who made the move to save Kourend. During the Battle of Conquest, King Shazian was ambushed by the elite warriors and ended up being stuck like the pig he was. This, my friends, is where the story truly gets interesting. A few days later is when the great and powerful Xeric first appeared to usher in the Age of Strife, bearing a striking similarity to the recently deceased dictator, King Shazian. It is speculated that his remains were used and he was resurrected, but for quite some time I wondered, what if there was more to this story, and the reason that Xeric's origin is so ambiguous is because King Shazian isn't actually Xeric. The king was a terrible human and incredibly evil, but what if Xeric wasn't a human and never was? And what if the answer to this question was hidden right in plain sight? When Xeric appeared, he ushered in what came to be known as the Age of Strife, in which he essentially forcefully conquered the entirety of Great Kourend with a massive army of lizard men. He then proceeded to brutally murder the leaders of each of the great houses of Kourend, seemingly in retribution for King Shazian's murder. It is thought that Xeric used the power of the Dark Altar to reanimate himself in a thrall-like state from King Shazian's corpse, and now he has begun terrorizing the inhabitants of Zeah to the point that many of them have fled to the neighboring country of Varlamore. Xeric was using his Lizard Man army to capture and torture even regular citizens who posed no threat, and seemingly had gone mad and cared only for death and destruction. The remaining citizens of Kourend spent every day in constant fear of a senseless and brutal death at the hands of the living dead king. In spite of the situation at hand, the people of Great Kourend have always had an intense desire to be free. Ever since escaping the mainland during the God Wars, these people were willing to die for their freedom. A coalition known as Humans Against Xeric banded together hundreds of citizens to lead a revolt against their ruler, but unfortunately they were unsuccessful in overthrowing him. But they were successful in not being enslaved to his will anymore, as he swiftly sent over 200 of them to the afterlife. This crippling defeat left people feeling hopeless and subjugated to the Dark Warlord's will, But humans are resilient and capable of great things. They just need to remember who they truly are. Xeric's reign of terror continued all across the continent until a young farmer witnessed a child being brutally murdered by the lizard men and decided to fight back. In front of the entire town, a simple farmer named Byrne slayed this reptilian foe, showing the townspeople even they had the power to fight back against the great oppressor. Humans have always been able to dig deep in their souls for courage when up against insurmountable odds. This is most certainly one of the reasons Xeric and many other dark entities are hungry for your soul. It's a weapon, a blinding light against the shadow that has unlimited potential if you simply wield it with courage. The citizens of Great Kourend realized the potential within themselves and began to unite and fight back at scale against the lizard men. And within 7 days, surprisingly, they had completely rid their lands of Xeric's army, forcing the dark warlord deep into the Kibos lowlands to Mount Quidamortum, where during his mortal life he had constructed a temple complex for his dark research. Surprisingly, the humans of Great Kourend managed to destroy the temple and weaken Xeric enough that they were able to quite literally force him into exile deep within what we know now as the Chambers of Xeric. To this day, we have no idea what truly happened to him, on the record at least. But one thing RuneScape's lore team has always done is give the answer to those with a keen eye. We know that above all, Xeric was obsessed with immortality and power, but there are several mysteries regarding how he managed to perform some of the insane feats he accomplished. How did he miraculously resurrect from the dead? How did he learn to make thralls and perform necromancy? Did he have an accomplice we weren't aware of? Maybe even a mentor? And is there a deeper threat lurking in the shadows that still waits for us to this day? The Chambers of Xeric was Old School RuneScape's very first raid, and there are many interesting stories, bosses, and lore to be encountered inside, but unfortunately, Xeric himself is nowhere to be found. Fortunately, what you will find here are the stories of his expeditions and experiments that are all well documented in the lore books that are protected by powerful beings of various sorts within the dungeon. And also, the luckiest of adventurers may find some incredibly rare artifacts to fill us in on what went on here, and ultimately, who was Xeric? The coveted Twisted Bow, a powerful weapon used by the twisted archers of Xeric's army. The Dragon Claws, an artifact crafted by the Dragonkin race, possibly obtained from Zeah's native dragonkin Karulum. Din's Bulwark, the impenetrable shield wielded by the hero Din. And the legendary magic weapon, the Kodai Wand, a magical relic used to cast the powerful ancient magics. This always confused me about the Kodai Wand. The ancient spellbook is unlocked by freeing the powerful Majorat Azanadra, a general of the dark god Zeros. The word Kodai literally means ancient in Japanese. These magics are a dark blessing of the Empty Lord, and it's strange that magicians way outside his empire would have access to the finest Zerosian weaponry. How did this knowledge and weapon get to Zeah? And, more directly, how did it get to Xeric? There are no known Zerosian settlements in Zeah, and less than a handful of Zerosians have ever set foot in Great Kourend. Who gave this weapon to him and his Kodai mages? Is there a Zerosian plot on Zeah that we're not aware of? His knowledge of ancient magic is both unsettling and suspicious, but it's nothing compared to his mastery of making thralls from both the living and the dead as easily as a person writes their name on a piece of paper. By far the most powerful user of thrall magic in RuneScape history is the infamous Majorat Sliske. He is a master of the Shadow Realm, and ironically a high-ranking Zerosian leader, serving directly under the god Zeros himself. He created the most well-known thralls in all of RuneScape, and I am of course talking about the Barrows brothers. He made a pact with them to give them immense knowledge and powerful supernatural weapons and armor. In exchange, he wanted their servitude when he deemed them worthy. The Barrows brothers became seemingly invincible. They shed blood, battle after battle, all the while Sliske spied on them from the Shadow Realm, watching their slow but inevitable demise. And when they were finally slain, he resurrected them as thralls, and Sliske claimed to have acquired them for servitude to his own master, Zeros. Perhaps you can see where I'm going with this one. During his reign, Xeric shared his knowledge and power to transform his closest advisor, Zamfir, into a terrifying, powerful thrall wizard capable of casting many powerful arcane corruptions upon those he encounters. And to this day, Zamfir schemes and commits acts of violence on behalf of Xeric, such as attempting to free the ice demon Wintertot and attempting to murder us for eavesdropping on a conversation he was having with his master Xeric, who at the time was possessing a man named Veos to communicate with Zamfir. This all takes place during the quest A Kingdom Divided, and confirms that in one way or another, Xeric is out there and plotting his return. Sliske's use of thralls is very similar to Xeric's, as in the Desert Treasure 2 quest, Sliske turns several once living characters into thralls he can control in order to manipulate us into obtaining powerful artifacts for him, before revealing himself at the end of the quest. Could there perhaps be a relation between the Zerosian Majorat and the undead warlord on the other side of the planet? One of the most famous spells in the game is the iconic Ice Barrage. Ice is one of the 4 ancient elements of the Zerosian spellbook, and the stronger a person is with this school of magic, the greater control they have over this frigid, destructive element. I mentioned that Zamfir had attempted to free the Wintertot earlier, which is an unbelievably strong ice demon or monster that ravaged Zeah and froze the northern reaches of the continent solid before being trapped by the Great Dwarven Smith Den. It is unknown how Wintertot ended up in Zeah, but what if we have the answer right in front of our eyes? Even though Wintertot was first encountered over 120 years before Xeric took control of Kourend, what if there was some sort of connection? Sliske is a puppet master of the highest order. What if he released this beast upon Kourend? Could this be why Zamfir, the servant of Xeric, sought to free it from its prison? It seems coincidental at first glance, but wait. Inside of the chambers of Xeric is an ice demon that is fought in an identical way to Wintertot, requiring heroes collect logs to burn in braziers, and only the hardiest adventurers will survive the cold and beat this demon. Perhaps the Wintertot's arrival is not so mysterious after all. It's also worth noting that the Kodai wand we discussed earlier can control the ancient elements, but specifically grants unlimited water runes to the user, meaning that it can literally be used to manifest and control the ancient element of ice. Was this used at some point to control the Wintertot? Upon completion of the quest, a kingdom divided and barely managing to survive in exchange with Xamfir, we are given access to some powerful new OSRS spells, which will aid us in our battles to come against these dark forces. Xeric and the other students of the Dark Altar were able to work with the dead like it was nothing, but one thing they struggled to do was something that was quite simple on the mainland, and that was teleportation. Transportation all over Zeah, such as cart systems, became necessary to move about the kingdom quickly. The OSRS spellbook does, however, contain some teleports. Apparently, Xamfir discovered techniques used to traverse time and space rapidly, and shared them with his master, allowing Xeric to create a powerful talisman to move about his kingdom and exert maximum control at all times. My theory that Sliske is secretly the one mentoring Xeric gets all the more serious once we take a look at the OSRS spellbook. There are some incredibly weird teleport destinations in this book of magic that Xeric himself discovered and used, such as the teleport to Barrows. Do I need to emphasize why this is particularly creepy? Xeric is using Sliske magic, Sliske tactics, and now has a key to Sliske's front door, and he's supposed to have no connection to this Majorat? I think not. There's another peculiar teleport within this book, and that is to Harmony Isle, which is very close to the Blackstone Pillars on Mosley Harmless, which we know Sliske is intensely fascinated with. This pillar is a conduit to the Shadow Realm, and has the ability to plunge surrounding areas deep into this parallel realm, and cause horrific beasts to manifest and kill you. This pillar can also perform a rare type of necromancy and return the dead to the living. All kinds of fun stuff. This idea of a powerful dark artifact that can warp reality and bring the dead back to life is very similar to the Dark Altar that Xeric is fascinated with, meaning that Sliske would most likely want to get his hands on this item and its power if he knew about it. The Blackstone Pillar shares more similarities with the altar when we dive into some of Kourend's lore. It is said that the Kourend catacombs are in a different realm entirely than the surface world, and this would give a huge motivation and reason for Sliske to be the one behind Xeric's dark enterprise. Originally, the demon Skotizo brought this artifact to Zeah, defying his master, the god Zamorak, who commanded he retrieve it in the first place. Skotizo is a black demon, and at one time before Zamorak's betrayal of Zeros, all demons on Gelinor sweared fealty to the dark god Zeros. This means that at one point, Sliske and Skotizo were colleagues, as well as literally every other demon on RuneScape. Zeros was betrayed by Zamorak, and many of the demons chose to help Zamorak in his treasonous act, but there were some who did not abandon the ancient god and leave his side. This topic becomes even more interesting when we realize that Skotizo is not the only powerful demon on Zeah. There is another one, who also wields the destructive power of the God of Shadows. The demons in Zeros' army were powerful and presumably taught many of his magical skills, and the demon Yama has been aiding Xeric's campaigns in Zeah for many years. During the fight with Yama, he uses many shadow attacks and even uses the term Umbra in one of his spells, which literally translates to shadow. It's clear that Yama was a powerful and knowledgeable ancient magic-wielding demon. It's worth noting that he even sends one of his disciples, the Judge of Yama, to murder us, and attacking us outright isn't enough. He literally pulls us into what appears to be the Shadow Realm itself in an attempt to snuff out our light. There are Zerosian demons seemingly all over Zeah at this point, and it would be virtually impossible that Sliske did not know of this place. The Chambers of Xeric are a visual experience, and have a ton of environmental storytelling aspects hidden within them. One particularly interesting fact is that the complex itself was built by the great artisan of Xeric, Tecton, who was once just a human, and now his new body that he inhabits was simply a gift from his master for his service. This is very similar to the way Sliske treated the Barrows brothers, and the demon Yama we just spoke of also happens to be the master of pacts, making deals with mortals in exchange for mercy and blessings. And it's clear that many people who use the shadow for power adopt this philosophy. It is very similar to the concept of a monkey paw, where you get wishes, but they're twisted and come with an immense cost. Xeric, for example, was murdered by his own people and resurrected as a powerful shadow wizard with a complete control of the dead. But what price did he pay? Well, I can tell you. In all of these pacts, the ultimate cost is your most valuable and priceless possession, your soul. The Dark Altar is known to connect to the River of Souls, which explains how and why this artifact is the central catalyst of the dark activities on Zeah. If we continue our delve through the chambers, we can observe some more incredible evidence that Sliske is potentially involved here. Xeric has many warriors, mages, and archers that are fitted with the finest weapons and armor guarding this dungeon, and in the tightrope room there is a peculiar type of archer wielding Carol's armor. Yes, that's right, this archer on Zeah, under the service of a dark thrall-wielding warlord, is wielding Carol's pieces. I wonder how those got here. If you weren't aware, the only way to obtain this armor in the game is to kill the Barrows brothers, and since we know Sliske created them, this is just another coincidence, of course. You may already know this, but you can only obtain this armor by fighting the Barrows brothers and receiving it as a drop from their chest. And since Sliske created them, this is another direct connection to the Majorat. While doing research for this video, I explored the entirety of Zeah and scoured temples, abandoned villages, and every dark, dangerous crevice that I could possibly find. It was on a hillside near the ice beast Wintertot that my blood ran cold. Near an ancient, forgotten burial site, there is what appears to be a ritual site that holds a very, very strange pattern visible from the minimap that is virtually identical to the symbol used by the ancient god Zeros, who Sliske served. In person, this ritual site is slightly washed out and faded by the elements, but still clearly very close to the ancient symbol, even using the patented ancient purple colors. Could this be where the ice demon Wintertot was summoned? Could this be the area Sliske convened with Xeric to show him the esoteric knowledge of the ancient gods? Peculiar. Outside the chambers of Xeric, we can see the symbol used by the Great Warlord, and it is very similar to the Zeros symbol, seemingly slightly changed as though it was passed down through the ages. It has the trademark X and 4 hemispheres in a circular orientation. The most bone-chilling evidence, though, that Xeric was under Sliske's control, or even Sliske himself, is one of the statues representing Xeric inside of the chambers. You will see these on many walls in the dungeon, and a simple examine yields interesting information. A stylized representation of Xeric, very peculiar. We know that Sliske is a skeletal-looking Majorat with a hood and wields shadow magic and is virtually identical to the depiction we find here in the chambers. What if, in the same way Sliske disguised himself as Ketla in Desert Treasure and the Odd Old Man at the Barrows to manipulate the masses and obtain rare artifacts? What if he did the same with King Shazian? Was Xeric an actual reincarnation, or was Xeric Sliske himself? The answers lurk out there in the shadows, and only time will tell if we can uncover the secrets of Xeric, the secrets of Zeah, and ultimately the secrets of life and death. Xeric always seemed to be reaching for knowledge he could never quite grasp, but the threads of fate are always intertwined in the most peculiar patterns, and little did he know the power he desired would be found in his eternal prison. Tecton may have been the one who built much of the chambers of Xeric, but long before this artisan ever turned one stone, Mount Quidamortum was home to an ancient race that, for some reason, abandoned this place of dark energy. There are relics found within the dungeon that do not match the work of the great artisan Tecton. This symbol found here on these chests is that of the Dragonkin, the race of beings who created dragons, worms, and hydras, and potentially the great guardian of Quidamortum, the Great Olm. The Dragonkin developed technology like the dragon weapons we know and love, and Dragonbane items to maintain control over the beasts they created. The Great Olm is weak to Dragonbane weaponry, meaning he does indeed share some familial lineage with dragons, and he drops Dragon Claws and the Dragon Hunter crossbow, giving more credence to the idea that this chasm was first settled by the Dragonkin. But this begs the question, where did they go? We know that the energy of the mountain was channeled by Xeric at his altar on the surface before its destruction, but did he find the source of this malevolent energy that he was looking for? His high priest by the name of Vasa Nesterio joined Xeric in his exile at Mount Quidamortum, and during his clerical duties in this prison, he discovered a strange purple crystal. This was indeed the power Xeric was looking for, but Vasa Nesterio was not going to let this opportunity to take this power and become a god slip through his fingers. Upon attempting to seize the crystals for himself, an earthquake hit and caused a massive rockfall to crush Vasa's fleshy human body. Before he could slip into the afterlife and die, the power of the crystals changed him. He believed that he had now become some sort of god, and that naturally he would now have the strength to take on his master Xeric and become the leader of the expedition. But instead of becoming the leader, he instead got one shot by Xeric and bound by a curse to the cavern to defend it for the rest of time until the mountain itself crumbles to the ages and his spirit seeps into the oblivion between worlds. In hindsight, one of the most interesting and suspicious aspects of Xeric's storyline is how we were first introduced to it. It all started with a simple conversation with a humble treasure hunter named Veos, and come to find out, he was actually being possessed by the dark warlord Xeric himself, meaning we had interacted and spoke with him many times already. If Veos is Xeric, is Xeric Sliske? It's hard to know who to trust in this day and age, but I promise, my friend, if you hit that subscribe button, you can trust me to release some of the juiciest and most interesting old school RuneScape lore videos you've ever seen. The number one question on most RuneScapers' minds after hearing the tale of Xeric is what happened to him deep in the chambers, and more importantly, what is next. After defeating the final boss of the dungeon, the Great Olm, you will find a lore book called the Dark Journal. And in this journal, you will find a bone-chilling message confirming our suspicions that Xeric is alive and well, but also hinting at the dark, inescapable evil to come. I am truly awestruck by the power that our Lord now wields. If we were to return to Kourend as he originally planned, I have no doubt that we would regain our former dominion over the kingdom with very little effort. I sense he has a new plan in mind. Perhaps the throne of Kourend has become too small a trophy to satisfy the ambitions of Lord Xeric. My friends, I greatly appreciate you watching today's video. It's one I've thought about for years, and it feels awesome to finally get it produced and uploading. Make sure to go and check out some of my other lore videos in the description. I have a lot of theories and ideas for videos to be made, so I will for sure continue to work very hard on bringing you the deepest dives into RuneScape lore. Next up, we will be visiting the steaming jungles of Varlamore and attempting to survive an expedition through a well-guarded ancient archive with a horrific secret. Can we uncover the truth? Can we discover the identity of the doom of Mokaitel?